with people who are, so we're recording so that people who are not able to join us are able to watch. So thank you, thank you. Thank you for being here with us this evening. I am, for those of you who haven't met me yet, I'm Adam Kendis. I'm the new counselor here in Arusha, and I'm excited to be with you. And I will let Megan introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Megan Morris. I'm the counselor over here on the Moshi campus, and I have been helping your kids out since last February. Know all of these D2s very well now. Can't believe that they're halfway through their D2 year almost.
Yeah. And I just want to say very briefly, as we're jumping in here, that I have been doing this for, I don't know, about 20 years, and you all have amazing children. Really, really just spectacular people. They're really a pleasure to work with. Um, and mostly that's the Arusha kids that I know, but I have gotten to spend some time with Moshi kids as well on some OP trips, and just really a fantastic group of people. You are all have wonderful children, so thank you for sharing them with us and letting us be a part of their lives as well. So I will let Megan get us started.
Great. So, diving right in, we're going to start with US timeline overview. One slide back, Adam.
Oops, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, that's fine. It jumped ahead. The US timeline overview is the first thing we're going to talk about because that is where so many kids are applying right now. So as I imagine almost all of you know deep in your bones, the deadlines are starting to approach. So the early action and early decision deadlines are generally between November 1st and 15th. Just as a reminder, an early decision application means that your child is committing to attend the university that they're applying to early decision if they get admitted and if they get a financial aid package that meets your family's needs. Early action is non-binding. It's an early application. They will get their decision from the university earlier, but it's not a commitment yet. The commitment timeline is still the same. In mid-December, hopefully before we go on break so that we can give them big hugs and high fives, early action and early decisions should be received. So that is intended to be enough time that then students will be able to know that they don't have to finish regular timeline applications or to be able to adjust their list a little bit if needed. So mid-December, a lot of students should at least have some news that hopefully will make it a really celebratory break for many of them. And then regular decision. So whether your student is applying early action or early decision or not, they likely will be preparing regular decision applications as well. So regular decision applications generally are due between January 1st and 15th. As you may know, we will be on break for that period. So we will be talking more closely with your kids in the coming weeks, but in early December, they will really have refined their list of where they are applying, barring unforeseen things coming up in December, so that we are getting all of their materials sent before we leave in December so that they can feel confident that those deadlines will all be met and there's not going to be a scramble at the last minute when we may not be on our computers over break to be sending things for their applications. March through the start of April is when those regular decisions will be coming back for kids from universities. And so sometimes it can happen as early as February, but usually it is early to mid-March through April 1st. Those decisions are announced from the universities. And then the month of April is the deliberation month and the follow-up communication month, because then on May 1st, final enrollment decisions will be due to universities in the US. Occasionally, the decision process might stretch on a little bit longer than that because there may be students who are on wait lists at universities and are waiting to hear. But if they are intending to enroll in a university in the US, they should have made that enrollment commitment somewhere by May 1st. So that is a quick timeline overview to give you a sense of the few months ahead of us for US applications.
And Megan, I just want to add one thing really quickly, which is one thing that's really important for all of your children who are awaiting early action or early decision news that will be coming back, as we said, mid-December. Might start coming in sooner for some students, but most of the students who apply early decision should hear between, let's say, December 15th and 20th, around there. Your children, if they're awaiting an early decision application where they're saying, if I get in, I'm going to go, they should still have all of their regular decision applications for the US ready. They should have them ready by December 10th. So they should have everything ready at least a week before they hear the news back. And this is because sometimes the news that they get back is not what they're expecting or hoping for. And if they wait until December 20th, for example, they open up an email that says, sorry, either you're not accepted or you're deferred to regular decision. That's the university saying we want to compare you to everyone else who applies in the next several months. And we're going to give you a decision in March or April. That gives them a very, very short window of time, roughly 10 days, to finish up applications. And you can imagine that if your child has just received news that is not what they were hoping for, they won't be in the best state of confidence, and they will be on vacation. They won't have our support, and it will be holiday time. I had a student in my office today who said, Mr. Kendis, you don't know what amazing work us IB students can do very quickly. And I said, that might be true, but I would not try that out. I would make sure that you're ready to go and that you have all of your applications done. So the key point that I would really hammer home with your children, which we are also hammering home, is all regular decision applications for the US completed by December 10th. They don't have to hit submit. They can wait, but they have to have it ready.
What if your kid is not applying to the US? Okay, so if they're not applying to the US, then we are absolutely still here to support them through every step of their application. But when those steps happen and what exactly those steps are just going to vary much more from university to university and from student to student. There is a lot of information available thanks to the country-specific timelines from UWC Southeast Asia. It's linked in this presentation, but it is also linked on our university counseling website. Those are really helpful timelines that they have put together. They have a crew of, I think, 7 college counselors. So they've pulled together some really great resources over the years that they generously share with us, that we share directly because we just find them incredibly useful. The main message for kids, whether they're applying to the US or elsewhere, is to plan ahead to beat deadlines. If a university has a published deadline of applications being due on February 1st, they should plan to have everything in 2 weeks in advance, 3 weeks in advance, because then if something pops up, if there's a question, if there's a concern, if the university is reaching back out to say that something they've done needs adjustment, then it's not a panic. They have time to get that done. They have time to ask that teacher for a recommendation that they didn't know that they needed. One of the things that we will be reiterating to all of them is that poor planning on their part is not an emergency on our part, which is kind of maybe a harsh way to say it, but we do want all of them to know that we are here to support them and we need them to be proactive in looking at their calendar and pacing backwards for what they need. So basic things that we have ready at our fingertips are easier for us to send off. So things like transcripts, we have those ready, we can pull them, but we do each have 80 students we're working with. And so if we have 20 kids coming to us in one day asking for things to be sent, it can take a little bit of time. So we asked them to give us a 2-week window before any transcripts would be due to the university when they're requesting them, and at least 4 weeks for recommendations, whether it's a recommendation that we are writing as their counselor on the school's behalf, or whether it's a recommendation that a teacher is writing. The great news is almost all of them have already asked those teachers for recommendations. We had them asking back in May and June. So if they were following this all the way along, those recommendations have been asked for a long time ago. If they're applying to the US, almost all of the teachers have already uploaded all of those recommendations into Maya Learning. So if they're applying to the US and to Europe, we have those recommendations ready to go, but we still do just need them to be looking at their timelines and planning appropriately and paying attention to whether they're applying to a university or system where it's kind of a rolling admission. The earlier they apply, the earlier they get their decision in some cases. So they are, we're ready to meet with them. We're ready to talk through where they're applying, make sure that their reading of things matches what we know to be true, and get all of those materials in so that they can also have those great, exciting announcements of admission, hopefully soon. Adam, do you have anything else for non-US applications?
No, I don't think so. I just would say, yeah, it is if your children for all of these processes, Megan and I, we know a lot, but student will sometimes say to me like, "Oh, well, how do I solve this for this university?" And I'm like, I can't know. Nobody could ever know all of the minutia for every university out there. And so this also takes your children being proactive. And from my experience so far in the past 3 months with your children, they're incredibly proactive and responsible. So it's just sometimes a gentle reminder to them that the answers are there and they really need to be one in the driver's seat here, just like they will be when they're at university, and just like they are here at UWCEA. Okay. This is me, right, Megan?
This is you.
All right. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about how applications are submitted. And again, we're focusing mostly here on US applications because the timeline is earlier. The US timeline happens earlier, and the applications to the US tend to be much more complicated. Annoyingly so, if you ask me, and if you ask most people, most other countries' application systems are much more straightforward. But there's many more parts and layers and complexity to the US system. There are some benefits to that because it means that US admissions are holistic. They will look at, okay, you didn't get a good grade in your math class during second semester of D1 year, and they'll listen to an explanation of why. Whereas most other countries will just look at your grades and say, okay, your grade is your grade. Anyways, okay, so I'm going to just change what I'm sharing here. So bear with me for a moment. So I'm going to share with you another screen here. And now what we're looking at is the Common App. And the Common App is the way that most applications in the US are submitted. Not all, but the vast majority. And some applications to other countries as well, but it's mostly US facing. This is one place where you can apply to many universities at once. So you can see here, I have a practice account. It says it in that red bar at the top. Any parents, if you wanted to create a practice account, it's free. And if you wanted to play around with this, I'm not sure why you would want to, but if you did want to, you could. So you can see that there's several tabs here, and I'm in the middle tab now that says Common App. And then on the left, there are these green check marks next to these 6 sections. And you get a green check mark once you've filled out completely a section and it's done. And because I have green check marks next to all 6 sections, I am ready to submit my application. Just to give you a quick sense of how this works, these first 4 sections, profile, family, education, and testing, can be completed in under an hour. They're mostly very basic questions that are quick and easy to answer. The activity section, which I'll pull up here, is basically the student's resume. And they have the opportunity to input up to 10 items. And I'll just show you if I click preview here, It shows you what I've input here. And this is the preview is in a PDF style. Megan, did that PDF pop up? Can you see the resume? Just making sure it can. Thank you. This is how universities will see their application in this PDF form. So students can always preview and see what their application will look like. So I'm just showing you. You can have up to 10 things in here. And the writing section is where they will drop that essay that they've been working on for, in some cases, many, many months since back in April or May. And again, if I preview here, I have a fake-ish essay that I used ChatGPT to write for me last year so that I could put something in here and show you an essay. Okay, so your students will not do that, but there we go. Okay, because I have those green check marks next to everything, then in this tab that says My Colleges, I have my fake list of schools that I am currently thinking about applying to. And I'm going to go to the first one here, Colby College. And when I click here, I see lots of great information. I see how I contact that college if I want to, their email address and phone number. I see the deadlines for when things need to be submitted, along with links to things about financial aid or the admissions office, etc. I see what the application fee could be, and their standardized test policy, etc. But right now, I just want to show you here that on the left, there's this questions section. And again, I have a green check mark because I've answered all the questions for Colby College. These questions, Colby has no extra essays, what we call supplementary essays. So I actually filled this out in 5 minutes while me and Megan were chatting before we started this meeting because I hadn't filled it out yet. And literally it took me 5 minutes. They're very basic questions. Like, what do I think I want to major in? And again, I just randomly chose economics, business, and undecided. So very, very quick and easy questions. This can take a long time when there are extra essay questions or those supplementary essay questions. And some schools will ask one, and some schools will ask 5 extra essays. So this is what we've been talking to your students about and just making sure that they're aware of this. This is where that gets into that. You want to have everything done by December 10th because you don't want to be writing 5 or more essays between December 10th or December 15th and December 30th because it's not ideal. Okay, but now that I've got this green check mark here.
One thing really quickly, those supplemental essays are individual to each unique college. So you especially don't want to be writing them over the December break if you have 5 or 6 or 7 universities on your regular decision list, because suddenly that's a lot of questions to be writing. They can't just be copied from one to the other. They're really unique to each school.
Yeah, thank you. And a question related to this just came in to the application process. So I'm going to read this question because it's what we're talking about now. It says, after submitting the ED application, or really any application, is it possible to change the Common App essay for RD or regular decision applications? And will affect the earlier applications sent once it's changed for December submissions? This is an excellent question. And the answer is no, well, excuse me, yes, you can change anything you want in here between submitting. Once you click submit, and there's multiple steps you have to go through in order to actually submit. It won't let me because I have a practice account. So I'll just show you here. I click on review and submit. And normally here for a student down on the right-hand side, it will say, are you sure you're ready to review and submit your application? They'll click yes. And then it will take them to a PDF version of their application. And they'll say, please review this and then check this box once you reviewed your application. And then it will take you to another page where it will say, are you sure you're ready to submit your application? And then sometimes you have to input a credit card and sometimes you have a fee waiver where there's no cost and you just get through that step. And then finally you'll submit it. So I always tell students, you're not going to accidentally submit your application. But once I have submitted my application, it is sent as a PDF version to whichever school I sent it to, and I cannot change what I sent to that school. It is locked in for that school. However, I can go back and change anything that I want, including essays or anything else, within my application before I submit the next time. So each time you submit, it creates a PDF. Think about it as like a photograph of something. You take a photograph, you hand it to somebody, you can't change that photograph, but I could rearrange the things on my desk before I took another photograph. Okay, so so here's where that gets submitted. Once I have submitted an application, or your child submits an application, then they will get an email from the university, usually within 24 hours, that allows them to track the status of their application. And it's really important that they carefully review that information because universities sometimes lose things. Not really lose them, but they have trouble matching them. So sometimes it takes the student reaching out to a school and saying, I know that my counselor submitted my transcript or my recommendation letters or whatever on this date because I can see when it was submitted in Maya. And it was a week and a half ago. And it's not showing up in my application portal. So the student has to follow up and email them. So this is one of those things where for each university that they apply to, they'll get a separate portal. It's really annoying. It should just be centralized like the Common App, but it's not. So they'll have a portal for each separate school that they apply to with a different username and password and student ID number, and they'll have to keep track of this. So we always tell students just make a spreadsheet, track all that information, or a Google Doc, whatever you like, put that all in one spot so you can easily find it. Megan, what am I missing here?
So, I mean, this is really how, for the US, the application is submitted. It's just getting through the green check marks in each section of the Common App and then clicking submit, potentially paying an application fee depending on what the university requires and whether your son or daughter has a fee waiver. When we talk about submitting an application, this is exactly what we're talking about here.
And somebody had asked in the chat, this is mainly for the US, right? And the answer is yes, but you can see here, I went into the college search tab and I put in through one of the filters, choose a different country. And there are many more universities, as we know, in Canada than 4, but 4 of them are on the Common App. So there's a handful of universities from outside of the US, but really this is primarily a US applicant tool. Okay. Let me go back to my other presentation. Give me a second here.
Okay, there was a question that came in about recommendations being submitted through Maya Learning, and will it show up in the Common App then? So, no. Where that will show up, where the student will be able to see that the recommendations have been sent through Maya Learning, we are sending them through Maya Learning to the Common App, but the kids can't see the status there. Where they will be able to see it is in Maya. They're able to go into Maya and see what has been sent from the school for each of their applications and in that university portal. So if I apply to Davidson College and I'm logging into my portal through Davidson to check on my checklist, I will be able to see there that they've received whatever the school sent through Maya to Common App to Davidson. So we tell students to have a little bit of patience on checking to make sure all the checkboxes are off because these documents are passing through some twisty pathways to get to where they need to go.
The other thing, just to follow up there, is that the deadline is the deadline for students to submit their piece. So we will have things submitted by the deadlines as well for your students. So if your student has a deadline of November 1st, we will submit their recommendation letters and their transcripts by November 1st, as long as they've done their part and requested the recommendation letters on time and everything. Even if they have submitted their application last week, sometimes we have to wait a little bit just because we have a lot that is going on and we have a backlog of things. But the university will get it by the deadline. And just so you know, I have submitted things more than a week after the deadline for students in some cases, and it does not impact the student whatsoever. The college knows that counselors are not the students, and they never hold it against the student if we send something past a deadline. We have wiggle room from the school side that the students do not have. There's
that
also
is not true to applications in other parts of the world. So that is part of why we emphasize to them really being ahead of their deadlines for applications in other parts of the world, because there are some other university systems that will say, I'm sorry, we don't have this, your application is invalid.
Right. So for example, the UK, if you're applying to the universities in the UK through the UCAS system, which we'll talk about more at another meeting, the deadline is the deadline for everything to be submitted. So we ask students to submit the part that they have to submit way before the deadline so that we can get our part in by the deadline. There's a question here that says, does the school help with funding application fees for universities? This is a great question. So there is a spot in the Common App that says to a student, do you think you qualify for a fee waiver? And if a student's family is not able to afford the applications, then we will approve that. And that's a conversation typically between your child and us if there's a question about whether or not they can pay for the applications. So if your child or you has a question about this, you can follow up with us. If paying for the applications is going to be a challenge for your family, then please follow up with us, and we can get them fee waivers. Students can always also reach out directly to the university and say, is it possible to get a fee waiver just through an email? But we can help them out with that as well. It says there's another question here. I see a tab for financial aid in the Common App. I would just say that the tab that says financial aid in the Common App is rather poor information, and I would just not use that. We're going to talk about submitting financial aid stuff in a few moments. That might even be next. So I'll let Megan chat about that, but I wouldn't use the information in the Common App about financial aid. I don't find it particularly helpful. Okay. All right, we went through submitting the application.
Yep.
Is this you, Megan, or me? I forget.
This I think is still you. Yep, still you.
Cool. Okay. So yeah, we talked about this a little bit, but we will submit the recommendation letters and the transcripts through Maya Learning. Okay, so it makes things, let me just tell you that I have been doing this for a while. So I started doing this when you still had to put things in an envelope with a stamp on it and send it to universities. And in that time zone or timeline of the world, universities would lose things, the mail would get screwed up. It was much more complicated. This electronic system is much, much better for all of us. So it makes things pretty easy. Things still can sometimes take a while to get matched. But as we said, your child just has to mark within Maya Learning they're requesting a transcript. We've asked students there's a general check mark in Maya Learning. I'm requesting transcripts for every school I apply to. They just have to toggle that once, and that triggers it for us so that we know to send transcripts. I think just relatedly, I'll just say, we know that the emails that we send once a week are lengthy and have a lot to read. And so we wish we had a better way to get this information, but we want to make sure that your children have the information they need so that they get everything done on time and have as low a stressful process as possible. And I say as possible because there always is a little bit of stress in this. The unknown is always a little bit stressful, right? If we're changing jobs or changing locations, it's always a bit stressful to us, and that's where your children are. But we want to try and reduce that stress, and it's by being on top of things and being early. I've had several conversations in the past few days with some students where they ask me something, and I'm like, we sent that in the past 3 weeks email, and it's very clearly stated in a bullet point. So you really have to read your emails. So if you can just check in with your children to say, are you making sure that you're reading that once a week email? Again, we know it's a lot of information. We wish we could make it easier than that, but this is a somewhat complicated process. So we will send their transcripts and recommendation letters. They will get to universities, and then they will get reviewed. And in their portal, it will say they have everything and they're ready to be reviewed. That portal that they get from each university that they apply to.
Okay, financial aid applications. So different colleges require different forms to be submitted. We have shared with students and in the emails that we've sent with you guys at various points, the list that another one of our UWC counselor friends pulled together for the Davis Foundation partner universities, which is what we talk about the most because that's 95% or more of the universities that our students apply to in the US. It's which form do each of those universities require? We are trying to make it as easy as we can on your kids because we know it's a hard process. For most universities, for international students, it will either be the CSS profile, the ISFA profile, or university-specific forms. The CSS profile, it's kind of like the Common App for financial aid. Kids fill stuff out in one place and they're deciding where they want to send it. And it is a real pain to fill out. And they have to go through a lot of screens, but a lot of them have already gotten to the point where they have green check marks in all the sections. We've been seeing them come to us with their questions. The downside to the CSS profile is that there is a small fee for each university that you are submitting it to. Some colleges will offer a fee waiver for the CSS profile. Usually, to get that waiver for the CSS profile fee, a student has to apply to the university, so submit that Common App application, and then reach out to the university to ask for the CSS waiver if they have them available. Because a number of the universities who we work really closely with don't want students to have to pay to submit financial aid applications. That's generally why some of them use something other than the CSS profile. So the ISFA profile is just a PDF form. It's not like a website that kids go through. It is an actual form that they will like either print and write in, but we encourage them to fill in on their computer so that everything can be read and it's very legible, that ISFA profile. And then they will either email it directly to the university, or more commonly, they will upload it in that portal. So step one, submit the application, the actual Common App application to the university. And then that usually unlocks the way to submit the financial aid application if it is not just through the CSS profile. There are also a handful of universities that just have a university-specific form. Those are often the most simple of all the forms. They are trying to take the, CSS is the longest, ISFA is the next longest, and then some of these university-specific forms are really quite condensed. And they would generally all be calling on the same information, just arranged in different ways or summarized in different ways. So those are the three main things that students will be doing. For our very, very small handful of American kids, there's also the FAFSA, which I know was mentioned in a question. And universities are getting gray hairs for everyone working in their financial aid office over the timeline of the FAFSA for this year. Some universities are asking even for the CSS from American applicants just to be able to get some of that early financial aid estimate out to people, but it really varies university to university. And then after submitting the financial aid application, usually the students will have to submit some supporting documentation to the university directly, whether it is uploading it through that portal or by emailing it to them. Each university is going to ask for different things. There's really not like a standard answer we can give students on this. So the main thing to do is to read the financial aid page thoroughly, especially the international student financial aid page for each university they're applying to, and then looking in that portal. Because each university portal is different, so we don't have a screenshot of one now, but they should each have a pretty clear checklist of what has been submitted and what the university is waiting on. And if they ever have a question when they're looking at that, they should just come with their computer to our office and we can look at the checklist with them and help them figure out exactly what it is the university is asking for. One question that often comes up is like, do these documents need to be official? Do they need to be translated? We usually tell kids to not make more work for themselves before they know they need to make more work. So if a university has specifically said, we need, official stamped official translations of all of these things, then that's what the university is going to require. But if it doesn't say specifically, then most universities will need some kind of translation, but there are a lot of free or inexpensive ways to get things translated thanks to the powers of the internet. And so submitting an unofficial translation, at least initially, and waiting to see if the university follows up to ask for that official thing might be what they need. Sometimes the universities will only ask for those official documents when the student has been admitted and they are finalizing the financial aid. So they're not necessarily having to get them in advance.
And if I can just add one thing there, Megan, I would also say when in doubt, and this is just kind of a general rule, email the financial aid office and ask. And the financial aid office and the admissions office are separate. Frequently, they're purposefully separate and they're not talking to each other. So the information about a student's finances is not shared for the admission team. And if you email the wrong department, they'll direct you to the right place. But you as a parent are definitely able to email and ask a question like this. Yes, your child could also email and ask a question, but when in doubt, go to the university and ask. because the general rule of thumb I would add here to what Megan just said is that the more selective the university, the more annoying they are in terms of what they ask for. And the most selective universities, the places as a general rule of thumb that are accepting 15% or less of students, are going to ask for official translations with what's that called? Like a stamp that it's been authenticated, right? Not just something that you can do online. So if that's going to take several weeks to do and it's going to potentially slow things down for your child in this process, I would say just reach out to the university and ask is always a good rule of thumb. Thanks, Megan. Oh, Megan, I'm going to bring up the question that was asked earlier in the forum also, because I think this is the appropriate time. Is that okay?
Yes. Oh, yes,
All
yes,
right.
yes.
I'm going to read the question and then I'll let you take this, Megan, or you can ask me to jump in. The question says, the college application forms we have seen require completing the form online, but some then require bank stamps, physical signatures, or ask for additional information via attachments, etc. Given that we are not with the students in Tanzania, this requires that we print these application forms, get the forms signed or stamped, and then rescanned back to the student. After rescanning, will these forms still be readable by the school, UWCEA application portal, and the college university where the student is applying? Please advise.
Okay. So we would advise for any forms that have to be filled out to do as much as possible by typing it in, just so that then if it is printed and rescanned, we're not losing some of that clarity each time. So for instance, the ISPA financial aid form, if as much as possible is being typed in to start, then some of them will accept like an electronic signature, but if they need a physical signature where you are physically printing it and signing it and rescanning it, just try to make sure that you're getting as clear a scan as possible by doing as much typed from the start as possible. But then anything that does need a physical signature or an official bank stamp or anything like that, I mean, the university does not want paper copies of all of these things. So they should be accepting the scanned copies. I would just say hold on to all of those originals in case any questions come up or you need to get a clearer scan somehow. There are, I imagine most of you are already familiar with these. There are some great scanning apps that you can get for on your phone. I know, like I have my Genius scan out for kids transcripts from their old schools almost daily, and they can capture a pretty good scan. It's better than just taking a picture of something for the quality. But universities are used to seeing scanned copies of things coming through. And none of the financial aid paperwork goes through us at all. At most schools, the university counselors really don't necessarily even know much about the financial aid application the kids are putting in. That's something the kids and the parents are doing totally separately. Often we know a bit more just because, with the boarding kids here and so many of them applying for significant financial aid, it's more a part of the conversation we're having. But all of that supporting documentation will go directly from the students to the universities, generally through those admissions portals that they have after they submit their application or by email.
And I just added into the chat here, CAM Scan, CAMSCAN. This is the app that I use on my phone. It's free and it's really great because it will clean up the edges if you have a crooked or something. It will lighten or darken a document. It will make it so that it's readable. So I always use this when I'm trying to upload a document. The one other thing just to add to this is when documents are being sent or to a university, because the question says, will they still be readable by us at the school? Unless we're supporting your child because they have a question, we never need that information. We might be able to help, and that giving us some more information might help us to advise you or your child about something. But all of this is being asked for by the school, by the universities they're applying to. Okay. And again, the universities are really, really generally helpful. So if you have a question, email the financial aid office, email the admissions office. They're used to people having lots of questions and they're very good at answering them. Okay. Oh,
Sorry,
cool.
one more thing that has come up with a few kids just today, and so I want to mention it on the financial aid forms and other supplemental financial aid forms that college might have. They might ask, will you have an outside scholarship? The answer to that, if your kid is thinking about the Davis Scholarship, is no. That is not a scholarship that's going directly to them. That is not scholarship money that they list on their applications. That's a partnership between the universities and the foundation that will help to underwrite their financial aid package, but it is not what the university is thinking of when they ask for an outside scholarship. An outside scholarship would be like, oh, I applied, my local bank had an essay contest and I turned in my essay and they're giving me a $500 scholarship to use towards my university. If they have any other specific outside scholarships they've qualified for, that's what would be listed for outside scholarship, but the Davis Foundation partnership money does not get listed anywhere.
One other thing just on financial aid, because this will start coming up in December. Just as a reminder, early decision is binding if it's affordable to you and your child. So if you get a package and it's not something that looks like it's a good fit for you and your child, you can say, we can't do this. You can try and then negotiate with most universities, not all. They'll be upfront on their financial aid page whether or not they negotiate usually. Some will say, we do not negotiate, whatever it is what it is. But many of the schools will. And you can say, you know what, this doesn't work for us. My sister, she has 3 children in university right now. One of them, the package wasn't great, so she went to the university and said, this isn't going to work for us. And they upped the package pretty significantly. Now, she had some documentation and reasoning behind it. It wasn't just like, please give me more money, but she explained the situation that she and her ex-husband were in, and the university upped the financial aid package pretty significantly. So I'm mentioning this because it's important to know that whatever number you get, if it seems like it's not a great fit, talk to the university about it. And we can support you with this and give you some advice about how to do this. But don't feel like this is just one thing and you have to say, like, this is what it is. You can always go to the university and ask. You can explain situations, and sometimes they will negotiate or change packages. Okay. We've already mentioned this a bit, but who can answer any questions we have? As we said, university admissions and financial aid offices are the best people to go to. Megan and I are pretty knowledgeable, but things change pretty quickly. You want the best, most up-to-date information. So we recommend going to the university for university-specific questions. As we mentioned before, our emails have lots of information. We strongly encourage your children to carefully read them each week. We know it's a lot of information. Please take the time. And of course, we are always happy to answer questions also. And I only belittle your children a little bit and read the email, and I have to chide them about that. Just joking. We won't belittle them. I don't read all my emails either. We know it's a lot of information. So anyways, those are the places to get answers to questions. We just have a couple of more slides, and then we're going to open it up for any other questions that you have. This slide here, I started university in 1997. We're sharing this because the landscape has changed very significantly in the past, sorry, math is failing me at the time, 25, 30 years or so. Okay, even in the past 10 years. When I started university in 1997, there was no Common App. There wasn't Word or anything, right? Like I used a typewriter to write my essays and to mail them to universities. But the Common App has made it so that many, many more people around the world can apply to universities, which is a wonderful thing. It has increased access in some ways, but it's also increased competition. And the US News and World Report and other places for ranking universities has made certain places incredibly popular. And that popularity has led to places being incredibly selective. Some counselors use the term highly rejective instead of highly selective for places like UPenn. So you can see here that change from 31%, almost a third of students being admitted, to 2022 it was 9%. I think now it's 5%, 2024. So you can see how much this is changing. We're sharing this because many of your children are amazing students and people. And they came to our school because they are such amazing students. And sometimes they have been told by many people throughout their lives, like, you are one of the best students in our school or in our region or whatever. They've had to work hard to get where they are. And sometimes that then people also say to them, since you're such an amazing student, you should be going to UPenn or Stanford or Harvard or other name brand schools. And it puts a lot of pressure on the children. And we know as counselors and as parents also that there are so many amazing paths to success. It's not like you go to a school that has a name brand and that makes everything easy for the rest of your life. There are so many more pieces to this, and there are so many more steps involved. And from doing this for over 20 years, I have seen over and over again that it's what you do when you go to university that really matters, not the name of the place that you go or how many students they reject. So we're sharing this as context because the landscape has really changed over the past 20, 25 years. And we just wanted to share a little bit of ways that we think you can support your child through this process. One is just to help them stay calm. They will all wind up someplace great. And again, it's going to be what they make of the place they go to, not because it's the hardest place to get into or because everyone recognizes the name on their sweatshirt that will make them have a good experience. Um, Encourage them to have a balanced list, and we're working on this with them, right? Just because a school is someplace that many students can be accepted to, sometimes students think it's not a good school for that reason, and nothing could be further from the truth. There's, I will not start sharing stories, but there are so many amazing stories. In fact, just one quick book that we've recommended before in our emails is Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be by Frank Bruni. And there's some great TED Talk type videos of him. He has done a lot of research on this. There's lots of data and anecdotes that the name of the college and how selective it is doesn't change your future drastically. Check in with them on their progress. I always recommend that you set up a once a week meeting with your child so that every Saturday, for example, you each get a cup of coffee, sit down on Zoom, and have a chat about how university stuff is going. And during that, let's just say 45 minutes or hour conversation, that is the only time that you are allowed to ask them about their applications. Because frequently, because you love your children so much and you also have so much anxiety about this process, you might, every time you're chatting with them on WhatsApp or you're talking with them, be like, hey, how's that essay coming along or whatever. They're already so stressed out. They don't need to have more of this. And so over many years, I've seen students really like this and parents really like it. Yeah, have a designated time for you asking about things in this process. They can ask you at any time if they need help or they need to cry or they need anything. They can come to you at any time, but from the parents, I recommend or we recommend you only get one 45-minute period per week or so to ask them. Now, you know your child best. Maybe they need more support than that. So obviously go with what's best for your child, but that's our recommendation. The financial aid piece, obviously, they're going to need your information and support for completing those applications. Be honest, obviously, about this process and what's affordable. I'll also just add to this, if sometimes parents I've heard say to me, because I'll say like, is this an affordable option? They'll say, well, if they get into this school, we'll make it work and replace this school with any of those name brand on your sweatshirt, Yale or Cornell or whatever. And my thought on this or our advice is, again, like make it affordable for you for the long term, not just because it's a specific name. And then just finally tell them, and we're sure you're already doing this, right? But just they need reminding of this. Tell them how proud you are of them, no matter where they're going, right? It's not about the name of that school, but it's about what they have achieved so far and what they will achieve. And just keep reminding that. I was having a conversation with our social emotional counselor on campus today, and she was like, I can feel the stress from the D2 students as I walk around campus. I can see physically in their body language how stressed out they are. And it's apparent just chatting with them. So they really need your extra love and support as you go through this. I see the question. There's a question about the book I recommended. I'm going to put into the chat in a moment the name of the book and the author, and then I'm going to put a link to a 30 or 40-minute video that if you don't want to read the book, you can just watch. And it's a really good video that summarizes his argument. So I'll do that. Megan, anything to add on this?
One other thing that popped up in my mind during the last slide, and as we're talking about finances, is we have talked with the students about this a lot as they're thinking about what is a balanced list and what are their chances of getting into different places. It is a reality of many, many colleges that who they are accepting sometimes will depend on the family's financial need. And so as students are submitting their applications, if they are going to be looking for large scholarships for the colleges they're going to, not getting into a university does not necessarily mean that they would not be an excellent academic fit at that school. Sometimes it just means that the university knows what their financial aid budget is, and they can't overextend themselves. They want to continue to be a university. And so they have to keep in mind how much scholarship money they have available. And they don't want to admit students who they can't afford to give the scholarship to that they would need to give for that student to be able to thrive there. So that is just one more thing I wanted to keep in mind. If you are helping your kid and you're saying, oh, of course you'll get into this place. I know, so-and-so got into this place. Just remember that there's so much in the background, finances or other things that we can't all know. There is a lot in this process that is just down to luck or what this university is seeing in a specific kid's application that we could never prepare them for. It's not a science, it is an art. And we will do our best to make sure they have a lot of good options. But there's gonna be disappointment in the coming month too, and we just hope that they by April will be really happy with the choices that they have ahead of them, and that they will be realistic going into it, knowing that they are all truly excellent applicants to the places they're applying. We are not encouraging them to apply anywhere where we don't think they have a chance of getting in. That would be a waste of their time. That'd be a waste of ours and the colleges. But there are so many special, wonderful kids around the world. We just happen, we think your kids are the best, but there are our counterparts at every other school out there who are seeing the same magical qualities in the kids that they're working with. I do not envy these college offices who are having to make these decisions.
Thanks, Megan. Yeah, and the beauty of this is that there are so many amazing places that are not crazy rejective. So there's so many great schools. And I'll just say the Davis Scholarship, I was just commenting to somebody today, is the most amazing scholarship that I've ever seen in my life. I've been doing this for 20 plus years. All of your children have affordable options in the US if they want to go, because there's at least 2 or 3 universities out of that list who will give a full scholarship covering everything to your child, no matter your financial situation. And many of the other ones will give amazing packages that are need-based, based on your specific financial situation. But Methodist University in North Carolina, University of Oklahoma in Oklahoma, both of those will give full scholarships to all UWC students who apply. And they're both fantastic schools. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox there. I see a question in here that says, could you please explain the early action versus early decision and implications? I know you mentioned there earlier, but I got logged out due to bad connection. Of course. Okay, so early action and early decision are both generally due to the university either November 1st or November 15th, and sometimes December 1st. And they will then give a decision usually before January 1st, sometime in December. Early action just means you're applying early and you can get a decision earlier. And you can apply to as many schools as you would like to early action. Early decision, you can only apply to one school. And it's binding, meaning that you have to sign a contract that says if you get in and it's affordable for your family, that you will attend that school. There are some caveats, right, about the affordability, and there actually is an early decision too. So you can do it twice, once in January. Either you can do it both times or just in January if you want, or just in November. But again, early action, as many as you want, not binding. The nice thing is generally students get their first acceptance and you can see that weight drop off their shoulders. They hold their chin a little bit higher. They have a bit more confidence. They feel so much better about themselves knowing they have at least one viable option. And then early decision, what is helpful about it is that it generally increases your chances of getting into a university. Some schools, it goes from a 10% acceptance rate, for example, to a 30% acceptance rate. That's, you can just Google that information, early decision acceptance rate at a university, and you can see versus regular decision, you can see how different that can be. Okay.
And some of that difference is due to it being, them looking at kids a little differently. Some of it's also because the kids who are applying early decision might also be some of the strongest applicants. So the profile of the kids who are admitted in the end might not differ that much. But also, like the statistics we were looking at about the percent of kids who are admitted, there's another statistic that colleges in the US care about called their yield, which is if you admit 100 kids, how many of those kids end up choosing your university and coming? And that goes into some of the rankings. And so if you admit a kid regular decision, they might go to one of the many other schools they've applied to. You have less of a chance of hooking them. If you admit them early, they are coming to you almost certainly. And so it helps your yield, it helps your numbers. And so that is one of the things that can weigh in kids' favor a little bit there.
Yeah, and the other thing about that is universities are businesses. They're nonprofits, but they have a bottom line. And they need to know how much money is coming in and how much is going out. And early decision gives them control. It makes their lives much easier. So they weigh more heavily early decision. There's a question that came in that says, what is rolling decision? Thank you for that question. The University of Oklahoma, for example, and Concordia College are both rolling. And rolling means you can apply anytime you want. And then that school will give you a decision generally about 6 to 8 weeks later. So we just had a student on the Arusha campus receive her first acceptance 2 days ago because she applied to a school almost 2 months ago. And don't feel like, oh my God, my child hasn't applied yet. I'm not sharing this to try and increase anyone's stress. The student just happened to be really excited about applying to the school. Rolling means they'll give you a decision usually 6 to 8 weeks later, though sometimes it changes. Okay. I see another question that just came in.
To a bank and they have like the number tabs and you pull the number and you wait your spot in line. So the earlier you apply to a school that offers rolling decision, the sooner they'll be looking at your application and giving you your answer.
Yeah. Thank you, Megan. Another question, do early decision 2 deadlines vary from school to school? Yes, just like early decision 1. Typically, we're talking about January 1st, January 15th, or February 1st, or sometime around January. Sometimes it could be January 7th or 10th or whatever. The thing to note also, though, is that deadline is actually a little bit movable. Ideally, if your student knows that they want to apply someplace early decision 2 and the school has a deadline of January 15th, that they will apply and mark early decision for January 15th. However, if your child applies, let's just say January 5th, and then the deadline's January 15th in this example, and January 18th, they go, I wish I had applied early decision 2. All they have to do is email the university and say, I'd like to change my application from regular decision to early decision. There's generally a week or 2 wiggle room because, again, this benefits the universities. They want as many early decision applicants as possible. So as long as they haven't finished the review process, they're still doing the review process, typically they will allow for early decision 2. Early decision 1, they're not generally as forgiving. They'll say you have early decision 2 usually. Okay.
And not every university offers early decision 2. It's offered less commonly than general early decision. And then the transcripts question, does the student need to upload the previous school's transcript separately and through Common App, or is there another way? Okay. So they may need to report their grades in Common App. Some schools will have kids list all of their classes and grades in their Common App, but their formal official transcripts come from us. So if your child was at UWC for 9th and 10th grade and 4 and M5, they don't have to do anything else. We have that on their transcript. If they came here in M5 or D1, then they know, because we have reminded them and reached out to them, but you can also check in with them to see if they've done it. They know that they need to get us a copy of their previous school's transcript. And then we will send it. The ideal version that we get from them is they're walking in with, their paper one and we're scanning it with our scanner, or they have a nice, pretty official PDF of it that they have shared with us. But there are also some schools that like their previous school records are like a little wonky looking, and we will send whatever they can give us from their previous school. Ideally, also, if it is not in English, it's a translated copy. If they already have an official stamped certified translated copy, that's great. We'd love to send that one. If not, then like per the earlier conversation, the official copy of the transcript with an unofficial translation suffices for a number of universities. So that can at least be the first step to get that in. Most universities are looking most closely at their transcript from UWC East Africa. So this D1 and D2 is what they really care the most about. So they will obviously be reviewing the previous transcript, but it is not going to hold as much weight in the application process as the most recent grades and those IB diploma grades. Okay. Financial aid.
Can I just add one thing to that, Megan? The vast majority of your children have given us their previous school's transcripts, and we have it uploaded to Maya Learning, and we are ready to send that along with their UWC EA transcript. The vast majority. So it's always worth just double checking with your child. We have shared folders with your children in Google Drive where they had to upload these things for us so that we could upload them into Maya Learning so that it will be sent. And in the vast majority of cases, they're there.
Financial aid form deadlines, are they generally the same as the Common App deadlines for EA, ED, or do they apply and then you wait to be asked through the portal? Okay, so a lot of universities will have a deadline for financial aid forms that is a week or even 2 weeks after the EA or ED deadline, but some have the same deadline. So this is something that should be posted very publicly on their website. The main thing to know is that when a student is submitting that EA or ED application, that they should be ready to submit their financial aid paperwork pretty soon afterwards. If they are waiting to ask for a fee waiver for the CSS profile, for instance, they probably will have to submit that application, the Common App application, and then get the fee waiver in order to be able to submit the financial aid paperwork. But they shouldn't be waiting for the university to ask for it. It should be something that as soon as they get that portal login, they're uploading the documents or they're sending the CSS profile if it's a school that requires the CSS profile, and that they're aiming to have it all in by the deadline, but knowing that there may be some a slightly later deadline for the financial aid. Especially for universities that are need aware in their admission, it's just an important piece of their application review to know how much financial aid a certain student is going to need. Other universities, it's not as much part of their application review, and so they can be a little more flexible on the timing.
I just also pulled up, Megan, can you see this? I'm sharing this spreadsheet. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've shared this out the past, I don't know, 3 or 4 emails that we've sent. This is a document that one of our colleagues at another UWC put together for each of the Davis partner schools. It says whether or not the school requires the CSS profile or something else, the ISAFA or something else, okay? And then each of these is a hyperlink that takes you to this information about when those documents are due. So I'm just gonna randomly click on Bowdoin, and we'll just see how quick and easy this is. Hopefully it's quick and easy. Hopefully this clicked over. Is it now showing you? Well, it hasn't actually loaded for me yet, but the Bowdoin page. Yeah, great. Yep. Okay. And so when in doubt, look at or not even when in doubt, look at the website for each of these schools, right? Here it took us right to the international students financial aid information, and it says what is required, and then which documentation, exchange rate, and I don't actually see the deadline for when this is due. So I'm going to click on the applying for aid piece on the left here and just see. So it says here for early decision candidates, this is the financial aid piece. It's due November 15th. Now, I don't know if Bowdoin's application, the student's part of applying to the university, is due either November 1st or November 15th. I'm not sure right now which one it is, but I do know that the financial aid deadline for early decision is November 15th. And if your child applies for early decision and they don't get in the financial aid piece on time, they won't get a financial aid package with their decision, which generally makes it not very helpful to see. And just because we're here, I'm going to click on admissions and I'm going to look and see what the deadline is, because sometimes it's the same and sometimes it's not. And let's see if I can quickly find the deadline for Bowdoin. I'm not finding it very quickly, am I? Should be right up here at the top. They should have something about deadlines, cost, aid, connect, apply. It's probably here. Yeah, it says early decision.
Like it is November 15th. So like for Bowdoin, for instance, the November 15th is the deadline for both the application and the financial aid. So this is part of why we really do encourage students to submit any early applications early before the deadline. Let's beat all of our deadlines this year. Let's not have last minute stress. As you all know from keeping in touch with your kids over the last 16 months, our internet is not always great. And what they don't want is to have an internet problem or a power problem when they are trying to get something in at the very last minute. So it is just so much smarter to try to get things in a couple days in advance and have the breathing room then to be able to make sure that everything is in on time. Okay, there was a question about the online sites that do online interview recordings for university apps that are then accepted as supplementary material. Do we think these are a good idea? So this is a relatively new phenomenon that I have also seen mentioned on a few of the university sites, that they will accept some of these outside service pre-recorded interviews. They're no longer doing interviews on their own. I'd say we don't have a lot of experience with those. We didn't have anyone that I know of do one last year on our campus. So I don't have firsthand experience about how that has gone for students. We have not had any university that was visiting us say, for instance, like that would be a key part of applications for our school. I think it's a pretty new ground that universities are just starting to explore. Adam, what are your thoughts?
I haven't had students use this in the past widely. I do know some schools who have. I think if there's a really compelling reason to for your child, but there's so many places in the application to share more information. If your child feels like they're going to share their best self through a video versus in writing, maybe. I think in general, there's just so many pieces. We don't need to make this even more complicated than it is. So case by case, if your child feels like it's going to be beneficial to them, great. But I think it's already stressful enough. So I'd say they have enough on their plate. Let's let them focus on other things.
And then there was a question about the Common App, the section on special circumstances. So in that general Common App section, under where the kid puts in their essay, there's an optional spot to be able to add information about special circumstances. So the question asked if it would make sense to write anything there, if it's in the essay to some degree. And then in the CSS, should they explain anything particular to your family that affects the financial resources available, or should you keep that for later? Okay, so first on the Common App section, that optional section, for a number of our students, they do have something that would be useful to put there just to make sure it's clear. We know the special circumstances that a lot of our students have gone through, and we will do our best to integrate that into our recommendation letter, or it might be clear from their transcript, or from these universities where we have lots of kids apply who really understand the transition to UWC. But for instance, I was just working today with a student who was like, yes, in that section, you should put that you spoke very little English and you had not been to school in English before arriving at UWC last year. Like that's an important part of your academic story. So that might be the type of information that a student would be including there. I also had a student who, had a death in the family very recently that they think might be affecting their performance this semester. They don't know yet, their grades aren't in, but it is the place to include any of those bits of information that might not be captured somewhere else in the application related to whether a student should get in. And then on the financial aid side, absolutely, in the CSS form, use that section about special circumstances to explain anything. Standardized forms, when they are for the people from the whole world, there is no way for them to capture anything. So if there's something that you think has not been captured by the information you have been putting in, please put it there. You can always refer back to it when it comes time for negotiating the package, but having it there in the first place, when you are first getting your financial aid package is the best chance to get a package that's really going to work for you, because that is being determined when the university still has all of their money available to them. And then later on, they're figuring out which other pockets of money they can dip into if they're trying to adjust packages later. Adam, anything else?
Yeah, I pulled up here in the Common App the section that we're talking about. So we're in the writing section, and this was the personal essay that we looked at before. And then underneath this, there's another little tab that says additional information. And I clicked yes here for the second question. It says, do you wish to provide details of circumstances not reflected in this application? I hit yes, and it gives me up to 650 additional words. Yes, by all means, if there's something that your child hasn't shared on their application that they think will help them explain themselves or their situation, whatever it may be, to the universities, then we definitely recommend that they do this. And just some quick examples of ways that I've seen students use this in the past week. One student had a very low grade in physics her first semester last year, and then recovered and had a stronger grade second semester. So if I'm a university just looking at her transcript, I won't know the background of what happened and how she went from a lower grade to a higher grade. She got to narrate what happened. So she was able to say, when I first came, I was studying physics and English for the first time. It was really hard. I was struggling. I went to the teacher every day and asked for help. I doubled down on learning vocabulary for physics. She wrote in a very compelling way that made something that could be a weakness look like a strength. So that was great. I had another student who had a resume that had more than 10 items that he wanted to share with the universities. And the activities section of the Common App only allows you to list 10. So he listed another 6 things in resume style that he wanted universities to know about him. Had a student share something about their personal life and some challenges in their family that helps explain. So it's up to 650 words, and you can use this in any way you want. You can write an extra essay that explains something. You can write bullet points about your life. You can use this for a resume. I had a student put a link to a website that they had created in here with some explanation of why they were sharing this. In general, your child narrating for universities who are reading their application as much as possible is helpful. The people who read these applications, they're reading quickly, and the more information we can help them out with, the better. There's another question here that says, when it comes to the submission of teacher recommendations and semester transcripts, do you send them the day when a student submits their application, or are they sent afterwards separately? Yes, we will send application materials by the deadline. As you can imagine, with having about 80 students on our caseload, all of whom are generally applying, or the vast majority of whom are applying at the same time, we are working to get everything in as quickly as possible. So it will not happen the same day your child submits their application probably, but it will be by the deadline that the application is due. And again, that deadline is for your student. It is not for us. I have submitted things after the deadline before. We won't be doing that, but it's fine and it does not hurt your child's chances. Obviously, if you need to drop off because we have already gone over, by all means, you can. We are able to stay for another 10 minutes or so and answer more questions if people have them, and we're happy to do so. So any other questions?
All day long. There was another question above that one. The colleges that provide full scholarships regardless of need. Can we repeat those? We know, please. Methodist, University of Oklahoma, any others? So those are the two that openly talk about how they will provide full scholarships. Methodist, when they were here visiting, they said they don't require any financial proof from families that they will give a full scholarship to all of our students. Oklahoma still requires you to go through the financial aid application process. And if your dad was Jeff Bezos, they might not give you a full ride, but we have yet to see a student who doesn't get a full ride there from our campuses in the last year, at least. And then there are a number of others that do not say that they automatically provide a full scholarship to everybody. And so what we have seen of the schools that generally provide full scholarship, it might be more reflective of the level of student need of the students who are applying there. So we hesitate to say, like, these other schools also do it. We have the schools where we send the most kids generally tend to be the most generous financially, because so many of our students, whether they are paying to come to UWC or not, financial aid is a big part of their decisions, their long-run decisions for where they're going. So I can say the schools where we sent multiple kids last year were all financially generous, cannot guarantee they'll meet full needs. So we're talking about places like Lewis and Clark, Lake Forest, St. Olaf, Concordia, Earlham, Goucher, College of the Atlantic, University of Florida. I'm sure that I'm missing some. I don't want to, St. Lawrence. There are just like a number of schools where we send multiple kids every year, and we send multiple kids there every year because they're great schools that are fair or generous financially. Is that fair, Adam?
Absolutely. And again, like Megan said, we can't say that all of those other schools will give full financial aid packages, but Methodist University doesn't even say that it's a need-based scholarship that they give to UWC students. For all UWC students across the world who want to go to Methodist and who apply, they give a academic scholarship that meets the full need. And I'm just going to talk about this for a moment because they give a scholarship that covers tuition, attending classes, plus room and board, your dorm and food, plus book money, plus a plane ticket once per year, plus settling in money when you first arrive of like $1,000 or something, so you can buy sheets for your bed and posters for your wall and whatever else. Plus, like our UWC students can go to Methodist for free. And when the representative visited our campuses a few weeks ago, she told me about a student who had actually struggled a bit at our Arusha campus. But then she struggled because she had not studied in English before. She was an incredibly hardworking and bright student. It was just she was studying in English for the first time, and it's a huge adaptation. She wound up going to Methodist and double majoring in economics and computer science. She had an internship before she graduated with Goldman Sachs, which is a investment banking and very well-known company. And she did so well in her internship that she got a job after graduating, first job out of university with Goldman Sachs as a starter job. We share this because we say this over and over again. If she had gone to, I don't know, Harvard or Yale or Princeton or whatever, maybe she would have also gone to Goldman Sachs, but it's about those connections that you have. It's about the mentoring that you get in university. Those experiences are really what are going to determine, more than a piece of paper that has a certain name on it, your opportunities after university. And I ask parents this all the time, and I would encourage you to think about this for a moment. How many of the people that you work with, do you know where they went to university? For me, it's almost none. I know almost none of the universities of the people that I work with here in Arusha. And it's my job to work on university stuff, right? Just because when you get to a little bit further in your career, it's about the work that you've done and the recommendations that you have in your network that really helps you get jobs, not because you have a degree from a certain place. So how amazing that any of your children could go to several universities in the US, we know for free or almost free. So sorry, I'll get off that soapbox. Let me see. Are there other questions that people have?
There was
that
a
we
question that
haven't
came
gotten
about
to?
SAT scores, and when it's optional, how do you know if you should submit them or not? So Adam has a great rule of thumb. Adam, what's your rule of thumb?
Yeah, so when you look up a school online, you can see what the mid 50% is for a school. They'll show you the average from the 25th percentile to the 75th percentile of students who are accepted with certain SAT scores. So it might just say, let's just say it says 1450 to 1550 If you are within that range or above, submit. If you're really close, a lot of times submit also, like if you're within 20 or 40 points or something. And if not, then don't. Um, the schools who are test optional, they really mean it. They know that the tests are flawed and that they benefit students who are native English speakers and who are from more affluent families. And so they know that there's lots of problems. And so if you don't submit them, it's fine. In fact, I've had university admissions people call me up on the phone before and say, Adam, such and such student submitted their SAT scores. And I said, yes. And they said, we're going to admit that student, but we want you to have that student send us an email saying that they retract their SAT scores from their application. I said, okay. And I said, why? And they said, well, we want our average to be high, right? So we want your student to be accepted, but we don't want to lower our average SAT score. So they manipulate this data. So SATs, don't worry about it. If you're within that mid 25 to 75%, great. If not, don't worry about it. Thank you everyone for coming. We're still happy to take a few more questions, but if you need to drop off, of course, please do so. And if you have follow-up questions that are personal and you don't want to ask here, of course, you can email us and we're happy to answer individual questions in that way too.
Shout out to Amador. I see you here being a dutiful student, making sure that you're going to be able to talk with your parents afterwards about everything. Give your parents a wave. I can see both of you on my screen. We probably have some other students floating around too. Guys,
Yeah.
you're doing a great job. You're going to college.
Amador was
Oh,
there
is that
last night. Also, I saw you, Amador, last night at the university presentation. All right. It looks like we have no more incoming questions. We'll do a going once, going twice. We'll give it another 30 seconds. This is where Megan's now going to close with her final jokes, her stand-up routine. She has a great closing routine here.
actually the last thing I want to say is I know for some of you tonight felt like a whole lot of talk about the US, and we're sorry as two Americans to just get up here and talk about the US all the time. It's the weirdest system. It is the strangest for so many people who haven't been through it themselves. And so many of our kids are applying there because of this tremendous opportunity with the Davis Scholarship. So it takes up a lot of our time and what we talk about. If you were here the whole time and your kid's not applying to the US, you are a trooper. Please let us know if you have other questions. We really do. It's what we end up talking with your students about the most. We talk with you the most, but we really, sorry, that's all.
Yeah, I wholeheartily agree. And then just also in closing then, so I think we're out of questions. I'll just say I've done this for a long time and it seems incredibly stressful now. And all of your children will wind up at wonderful places. Every year that I've done this, people are nervous, rightfully so, right? But your children will wind up great places. And again, it's going to be what they make of their experience when they get there that really, really matters. Again, if you weren't there at the beginning, Megan and I feel incredibly lucky to get to work with such amazing young people. They really are special people. And so thank you for raising such great kids and for sharing them with us and trusting us with this process. Megan, what else do we have?
I was just gonna say, I was talking to Adam the other day because we're in the thick of writing the recommendation letters for your kids. And it just feels so nice to be able to genuinely, in every single letter that we're writing, say that we unreservedly recommend your sons and daughters for admission at any university. Like, we think that they hung the moon. We think your kids are so awesome. And that makes our job a lot easier. And it is part of what makes me know I could never imagine being on the other side of this process, because I just think that we have, 80 on our campus and 80 on the other campus of the greatest kids in the world. And then I think about all of these other schools everywhere who maybe think the same thing, but they're wrong because we have the best kids. So y'all have just the greatest children.
With that, we thank you very much for your time. If you have personal questions that weren't answered, please feel free to follow up and just take a deep breath and know that everything's going to work out okay. It always does. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Night, guys.